Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be sharing 3 cards that all have cupcakes on them, and I used a stamp that was in my kit from Kraft Supplies for You to create these stamps. I've also used some ribbon and some lace that was in the kit. The stamp set that I'm using on all of these cards is a Heidi Grace stamp, and it's called Sweets, and it's a 4x8 stamp set. I'm going to take the largest of the cupcakes and stamp that 3 times onto some smooth white cardstock using my Stays On Jet Black ink. I'm going to use some wet medium to colour these cupcakes, so I don't want my black ink to smudge. I'm going to use my Jane Davenport watercolours, and this palette is called Bright, the Bright palette. I'm just going to spray the paints with some water and then use a water brush to colour the cupcakes. I will use a couple of different shades of each colour so that I have got a bit of shading on the cakes. To top the cakes, I'm going to use this Bow Bunny glitter paste in gold. And I'm going to apply that quite thickly and quite roughly. I'm not trying to get a smooth coverage here. I want it to look like it's textured, like it would be if it was icing. I went back to my watercolours to colour the cherry on top of the icing. Once I had all my colour on, I set that aside to dry. When everything was dry, I used my Uniball Eye Micro black pen and just went over the detail of the cupcakes. I wanted to make a top opening slimline card for this, so I cut a piece of cardstock that was 8 1/4 inches by 6 1/2 inches, and then I scored it at 3 1/4 inches on the 6 1/2 inch edge. I'm going to cut my paper for my background now. I'm going to use a piece of this gold mirror card. I've cut that so that it's 8 inches by 3 inches. And a piece of this stripy pattern paper that I got free with a magazine, I believe. I'm going to cut that at 7 3/4 by 2 3/4. Now I'm going to use some of this black and white striped lace or zebra type lace. It comes ruffled, and I have unpicked the stitching and ironed it flat because I didn't want too much bulk on this. And I'm going to run that around my pattern paper and tie a knot on the left hand edge. I'm going to secure that at the back with some double-sided tape. Now I'm going to use some of my Aleene's Original Tacky Glue to attach that pattern paper panel to the gold cardstock. My next job is to attach my cupcakes over the top of that ribbon. So I'm going to attach the one on the left and the right straight down to the card, and then the one in the middle I'm going to attach a piece of chipboard and then attach that to the card so that it's risen slightly above the other two. Actually, I used craft foam, not chipboard. I took one of my pre-printed sentiments and attach that to some of the gold cardstock that I'd used to mat my pattern paper on, and now I'm going to attach it on the front of my card so on top of the centre cupcake. To finish this card off, I'm going to give my cherries a coat of glossy accents. It goes on milky, but when it is dry it is beautifully clear and nice and glossy. Our next card is a small card. It's 4 1/8 inches square. I'm going to use these two stamps from the stamp kit, and it's a stack of cupcakes and then a small cupcake on its own. I'm going to stamp those onto a piece of plain white cardstock using my Versamark embossing ink, and then I'm going to use my black embossing powder and emboss them. I did this for 3 of the towers and 4 of the single cakes. I didn't end up using them all. When I'm doing this sort of thing though, I prefer to make more than I need instead of having to come back and make some more if I want more. To colour these cakes, I'm going to use Distress inks and Distress Oxide inks. I can't remember what colours I used where, so I'm unfortunate if you'd like to know what colour a particular cake is, but I just pressed my ink pad onto my acrylic block and then used my water brush to apply the colour to the cake. I used a couple of colours on each section of the cake, so we had a bit of shading or a bit of shading effect, and I just coloured them randomly. I didn't have a preconceived idea of what colours I was going to use. So I just carried on in the same way until I had all of my cupcakes coloured. There's a stamp in the pack that has a picture of a cupcake, and then underneath it says "Hello Cupcake." I wanted to use that for my greeting, so I've done exactly the same as I did with the cakes. I've inked it up with my Versamark embossing ink, and then I have embossed it with black embossing powder. I'm going to create my card base now, so I've just got a piece of A4 cardstock. I've cut that at 4 1/8, and I'm just going to fold it in halves to make my 4 1/8 square card. I play around with my cakes that I've already prepared and just try and work out some positioning. I decided to add some of the lace and ribbon that was in the kit. The lace was in last month's kit, I think. So I first of all apply the ribbon to the card bottom, and then apply the lace on top of that. Next I cut a piece of white cardstock that was 3 7/8 by 2 7/8 to make a panel to go above that lace, sort of over the top of it, and this is where I will add my cupcakes. I used my black Kaiser ink cube to ink the edges of the cardstock because that helps it stand out from the background. Because of the thickness of the lace, I wanted to have the white cardstock panel raised up a bit so that it would sit properly. So I added a bit of chipboard to the back of the white card panel. I then used the same glue to attach that panel to the card front so that it had about 1/8 of an inch border on the top, left and right sides. Now that I've reduced the size of the panel where the cupcake's going to go, I have to once again play around with those and decide where I'm going to put them. Once I've made up my mind where they're going to go, I go ahead and stick them down using my Aleene's Original Tacky Glue. The cupcake on the greeting is too big now, so I trim that off, and then I mat my greeting, which says Hello Cupcake, onto a piece of gold cardstock, attach that to a piece, or two pieces actually, of craft foam, and then attach that on the bottom of the card. And that completes card number 2 for today. Card number 3 is a 5 1/4 inch square card. I have cut my card out of white cardstock, and I have also cut a white panel that is 5 1/4 inches by 3 inches. I'm going to use some Stampendous pearlised mica fragments that I got in my Kraft Supplies for You kit a couple of months ago, I think. So I'm applying a coat of glue all over the piece of white cardstock, and then I'm going to push or flatten the mica flakes onto that gluey surface and get them to stick on there. I will use a brush to smooth my layer of glue out. While I'm waiting for the glue to dry with the mica flakes, I go ahead and stamp another one of the large cupcakes using my Versamark embossing stamp pad, and heat emboss that with black embossing powder. I use the same technique with the Distress Inks and my water brush on this cupcake as I used on the cupcakes in the previous card. Time now to fussy cut that cupcake out. Thankfully it's a fairly simple shape because I'm not a big fussy cutting fan, but this was quite easy. I love the look of fussy cut elements, it's just the fussy cutting that I'm not so keen on. Time now to start work on my layers. I'm going to cut 2 pieces of the gold cardstock 1/2 inch wide by 5 1/4 inches. These will then be attached to the top and bottom of the piece of cardstock that has the mica fragments attached to it. I want it to have about 1/4 inch of the gold showing above each edge. Now I cut an inch strip, or 1 inch by 5 1/4 inch strip of this pattern paper and to go behind the gold. I'm just sort of winging this as I go, and once I get those pattern papers behind there, I decide that I would like to have another little strip of gold. So I cut some more gold. I think I cut it about 1/2 inch, the same as I did before, to 5 1/4, and then layer that behind the pattern paper. Now that I've got all of my layers or strips cut, I ink the edge of them all with my Craft black ink cube, and then use my glue to attach them to each other so that they actually end up filling up the whole front of the card. Once all of those are attached to each other, I attach them to the front of the card. Once again, I'm going to pop my big cupcake up off of the card front, so I use a bit of scrap cardboard and stick that to the large cupcake that will be in the middle of my card. The two smaller cupcakes that you see there are left over from the previous card. I went ahead and attached them to the front of the card, but I had a change of heart and wanted to add something extra to the card front, so I had to take them off. I decided to add a bow using the same ribbon that I have used on the previous two cards. So I tied a bow and used my glue to attach that to the front of the card, just under that large cake. My greeting is one of my computer generated greetings. I just print out a whole sheet of various greetings and then they're available when I'm ready for them. I've trimmed it down to size and I'm going to mat it onto some gold cardstock and then trim the gold cardstock down to size. To finish my card off, I added a coat of glossy accents to the icing area of each of my cupcake. So you can see here what I mean by it goes on milky, but it does dry perfectly clear. So that's it for my video for today. Thank you for joining me. I will have a link in the description below for Kraft Supplies for You if you'd like to get hold of this stamp set. It's a very handy stamp set, I think, and very easy to use. Thank you for joining me. I hope you will click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and you will join me for my next video. Thank you.